So we're going to have a look at some of the remaining parameters on Twin 3 before we get into some sound design. So first of all, we're going to look at polyphony, unison, and microtuning, which is located down here. So polyphony is whether we're going to play multiple notes essentially, or just play monophonically, so one note at a time. We can change that by choosing the voice setting here and changing that to 1 for mono. So now if I play 2 consecutive notes, the second one will replace the first one. So I can only play one note at a time. And we can set that to however we want. So if I have it on 2, for example, I can only play 2 notes at a time. Now this is going to be a trade-off between kind of CPU usage and also the playability of the instrument. But obviously, sometimes you want to create the sound of a monophonic instrument like a bass guitar, where you could play chords, but generally you don't. Lead synth parts, lead guitar, generally, again, you're going to mostly be playing a monophonic part, and that allows you to introduce glide and things like that. So if you want to do that, you put the voices to 1. But in the polyphonic mode, the voice determines the number of voices that can be played simultaneously. And again, as I said, that's going to be a trade-off between CPU usage and the sound of the instrument that you want. Now, if we wanted to create a kind of thick stack sound, let's increase the voices all the way up. And of course, if we had a not so powerful computer, this may start to cause problems. But if we then introduce the unison, we can actually stack these notes up. So for every note that we play, we can stack up, say, 64 voices. But now you see that I can't play a chord because I'm using all the voices every single time I play a single note. So let's try setting that to maybe 16. Now we're going to get a nice thick kind of super saw sound. Okay, now using the spread control, we can choose to kind of spread these sounds within the stereo field and also detune them slightly, or quite a lot, to the point where it gets a little bit kind of wonky sounding. So that's without any of the spread. So this is kind of left and right stereo width and also detuning. Okay, now what we also have here is a micro tuning option. So by kind of default, we're using the standard tuning, but we can choose some kind of more experimental tunings from here. So if you want to try that out, you can do that from here. And those are the settings that relate to the polyphony and the tuning. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the other features we have here. Let's have a look at the output section and also high quality. So the high quality button is going to enable a high quality mode, which is going to introduce oversampling of the internal processing. And this will alleviate any problems with the kind of aliasing effects you might get. So again, trade off with CPU usage. For some sounds, you're not going to hear any difference. But if you find you're running out of CPU and you've got that switched on, you could try switching it off. Okay, let's come across to the output section here. Now we have 2 controls here. There's actually 2 hidden within this knob here. There's the volume and also the pan. So that's an output volume for the synth and an output pan as well. Then we have a width control. Now this allows you to control the stereo spread of the output signal. So 100% is just standard stereo. So it's going to be following whatever stereo spread we've introduced as we've been creating our sounds. We can increase this to make it much more stereo. Let's just reset this to compare. So that's kind of a super stereo, or we can actually make it mono. It's quite a neat little extra feature to have at the end of the signal chain there. Careful when you're making things super stereo, you want to check that in mono, because you can introduce phase cancellation, which will kind of cause certain areas of the frequency spectrum within the sound to disappear or to be attenuated. Okay, now across to the far side here, we have MIDI learn. Now when we switch this on, you'll see that parameters that can be controlled using a MIDI controller are accessible here. So let's just select one of these. I'll move a knob on my controller, switch this off. Let's switch the reverb on. And now I have the ability to control that parameter with my MIDI controller. Now from here, we can clear. We can actually route things directly from here as well. We can revert, we can save, and we can load the factory settings back in. Okay, just going up to the top here, we have undo and redo. So I could undo that assignment and redo it here as well. And we also have one of my favorite features from FabFilter plugins, which is the kind of comparison option here. So what we can do is copy this across to B, then we could say make some changes here. And then when we flick between the two, we can compare these two sounds. It's a really neat feature. I use this all the time on the compressor, especially when I'm trying out different kind of values, different grooves for my compression. And it's a really nice feature to have in the synth as well. Now, just finally, for the kind of parameters of the plugin, let's have a look at the presets here. So the presets are all organized in folders here. We can also save our own presets from this menu. When we load up a preset, we can favorite it from here. And then when we click on favorites, we can see all our favorited presets. So nice, simple preset browser. Okay, so that's brought us to the end of the kind of part of the series where we're just looking at the parameters of Twin 3. So in this video, we covered the polyphony. So we have the number of voices that can be played simultaneously, and we can either use those to play multiple notes, or we can play monophonically if we just have one voice there. Now, the unison control allows us to stack those voices, and we can spread those in the stereo field and also detune them using the unison spread control. So when you're using the polyphony controls, you want to make sure you get the right balance between being able to play enough notes and having the right kind of sound if you want it to be kind of stacked up. But just be careful you don't run out of voices. So, for example, if you had the voices set to 64 and unison was on 64, then you're going to play 64 voices for every note you press, which means you wouldn't be able to play chords. So you want to set that up so if you want to play chords, you can do. Tuning from here as well. And then we had a look at the output section, width to make it super stereo or mono, and then volume and pan here as well. This can be modulated too, of course. High quality mode is going to alleviate any problems with aliasing. Then we had a look at MIDI learn to route MIDI controllers to control parameters directly. And then we also had a look at, just undo and redo here, the comparison and also loading up presets and favoriting. Okay, so now we've covered the parameters of Twin 3. Now we're going to have a look at some sound design. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.